I have done nothing wrong, ever, in my life.
I know this. And I love you.
When in smoky tarnation are you gonna get it through your teeny-weeny strap bikini little waterhead?
It's not about you!
Why am I being blamed for everything?
Well, I don't agree with the message of Hazbin Hotel. The problem is, Hazbin Hotel also doesn't agree with the message of Hazbin Hotel. However, regardless of whether I agree with it or not,
Except I don't!
this show has so many problems. There's no tension, the villain is weak, the plot is meaningless and structured in a very uninteresting way, which I guess is just a nice way of saying it's boring. It's also unfocused, inconsistent, and is constantly contradicting itself.
People, what more do you need to see?
And if you're familiar with the show at all, it might surprise you just how much the main character, Charlie, has to do with these problems. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that she is pretty much the problem with the show. Ask me why, Ghost.
Why?
Be more specific. Come on, Ghost. This is why I pay you the big bucks.
You have tried to pay me with Chuck E. Cheese tokens. Why is Charlie the problem here?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. It all comes down to how Charlie was written, and what is the gentlest way to say this? Charlie is stupid, and her idea is stupid.
That really hurts my feelings.
Oh, you have a point.
She's an entitled, arrogant, incompetent Nepo baby who knows nothing about heaven or redemption and lies to herself and everyone around her to get them to support her vanity project so she'll feel better about herself.
Please tell me I'm a good person. Please, deep down, just tell me I'm a good person.
So in other words, she's a strong female character and a great role model. And I am going to back all this up. But before we get there, first I'm going to go through the plot so we're all on the same page. Then I've tried to organize my thoughts into 3 sections: story, storytelling, and characters, but mostly Charlie. The idea is that analyzing these problems and offering some solutions will help me avoid them in my own storytelling.
The idea has merit.
And I just have a lot of fun doing this. The only thing I like more than media I can genuinely enjoy is media that's so bad I can't look away. Let's get started.
Shall we?
Episode 1 has by far the longest summary because it starts out with a very long lore dump of the creation myth of the Hazbin Hotel world, so we know what's up and how we got here. Except that heaven is just there. No word on how it was created or how it got there. Same for the angels who rule it and worship good while shielding all from evil.
So far, so good.
Lucifer's one of these angels, and we're told that he had a bunch of new ideas.
It's bigger! It's better!
And the other angels did not like that, because things that are different are not the same. Heaven went on to create the first humans, Adam, who they created to be a controlling jerk for some reason, and Lilith, who immediately leaves him. Good job, guys. Lilith gets with Lucifer.
This one is different.
He's a guy.
Who loved her rebellious spirit.
I think that's a red flag.
And after the whole Lilith thing didn't pan out, Heaven created Eve as Adam's new wife.
If at first you don't succeed, keep on sucking till you do succeed.
Lilith and Lucifer wanted to share free will with the world, so Lucifer gave Eve, who did not have free will at this point, some fruit from the Tree of Knowledge. Now, for some reason, eating fruit from the Tree of Knowledge was bad and disobedient. We never find out why, in Hazbin Hotel lore, this is disobedient, or if anyone even knew it was disobedient before partaking of said fruit. There's no mention of a god, religious texts, rules they need to follow, nothing. Forget nutrition, eating fruit is now the ultimate sin.
The ultimate evil in the world!
Well, because Lucifer chose to give Eve the fruit, the entire world is now cursed.
So far, so good.
And evil has found its way past the other angels who have been trying to shield the world.
So far, so good.
So Lucifer's actions created hell. The show says this directly, I'm not just assuming. And the order that Heaven was trying to maintain is destroyed. Wow, Lucy, how are those big ideas of yours going? What about those mean angels trying to keep you from destroying life as we know it?
I advise you, don't do it! Refuse! Stand down!
How about I do anyway?
So as punishment, Lucifer and Lilith are cast out of heaven into the hell Lucy just created, specifically so they can't see humans doing any good and only see humans doing evil. Alright, I guess. Lucifer becomes a depressed emo boy, but Lilith ruled Hell as the ultimate girl boss.
All right, girls, go girls!
Hell, an evil place, became so powerful that Heaven, the ones tasked with shielding the world from evil, grew concerned and made what the story calls a heartless decision, to have yearly exterminations to make sure Hell could never attack Heaven. People kill each other all the time in Hell, but it's not permanent unless you have angelic steel, which, surprise, surprise, angels have. Then we're told that Lilith's unspecified dream, we aren't told what it is passed down to her daughter Charlie. And that's where we finally cut to present-day Hell and meet Charlie and her girlfriend Vaggie. So, an extermination has just happened. Charlie is understandably sad and also hasn't heard from her mother in 7 years.
Why are you telling me all this? It's plot exposition. It has to go somewhere.
Then we're given the rest of the exposition we need to understand the show in the form of a commercial.
You like blood, violence, and depravity of a sexual nature? That's why you're in hell! What would you say if I told you there was a place that had none of that?
Which is actually a pretty creative idea, but would be more impactful had we not just finished a long storybook info dump just prior to this.
Hazbin Hotel, a misguided path to redemption. Founded 5 days ago by Lucifer's delusional daughter. Place your fate in her inexperienced hands as she tries to work through her daddy issues by fixing you.
Well, that pretty much covers everything I had to say. I guess I can end the video here. Remember to not subscribe. You don't want Ghost to be angry. Or is this just here for defenders of the show to point out and try to discredit any critique? At least the commercial's kind of funny, and then we do get introduced to the main setting, the Hazbin Hotel, which Charlie hopes to use to redeem sinners, even though she doesn't know what that means or if it will work. More on that later. And we meet most of the rest of the main cast, Alastor, Angel, Husk, and Nifty, and we get a good picture of who everyone is. Charlie is naive and incompetent.
What makes you think?
I mean, she's perfect. She just cares too much. Her only flaw is that she's not enough of a girl boss yet, and she just has to look inside herself to become the girl boss she already was the whole time. That's the actual story, by the way. I'm not just making fun of her. Vaggie is there to support Charlie, agree with everything she says, say the things Charlie is thinking but is too nice to say out loud, and to be the direct, serious foil to Charlie's sunshine and rainbows personality. In a show for adults.
It's giving Tumblr. Derogatory.
Alastor is a radio demon, which is a fun gimmick, but doesn't really mean anything beyond that, so that's kind of a waste. And he's lending his power to the hotel for kicks and giggles. He's also an overlord, which means he rules a certain section of hell, and also people can sell their souls to him, but overlords can also sell their souls to other overlords, so...
That makes perfect sense!
Angel is an adult film star. When I was a kid, I called any movie that wasn't animated an adult film, much to the chagrin of my very conservative parents. Anyways, Angel's thing is sexually harassing everyone.
What makes you think anyone would be into this? And I need a big, strong daddy to put me in my place. Oh, I will. No, that one can't afford me.
You couldn't afford it, honey. If you can't afford it, finance it!
Hey, you short king.
But usually one of those people will not be into it.
Hi, I'm not into it.
I'm not sure why this is okay, but it is. He's just at the hotel because rent is free and crack is expensive.
She just, came up to me and started talking to me about crack.
I mean, I appreciate his honesty. Husk is the mean, no-nonsense bartender who's forced to work there because he sold his soul to Alastor, and Nifty is there to clean the hotel and waste screen time. Charlie's dad calls and she's got a meeting with Heaven where she hopes to pitch her hotel to them. Then she dances through the streets singing an upbeat song about it being a happy day in hell, while murder, furry BDSM, cannibalism, trash fires, torture, and all manner of literal hellish things are going on in the background. I don't really know anything about music, but I thought it was a catchy tune. The voices sounded nice, and it is a funny contrast to see Charlie's joyful singing with literal hell in the background. After the song, we meet the main antagonist, Adam, the head of the exterminating angels. Lute, Adam's right-hand woman, says sinners had their chance and earned damnation, and angels don't make mistakes. Charlie counters by saying sinners just made a few mistakes. Adam then sings an absolute banger of a song, which unfortunately adds no new information, so it's kind of a waste. He says that the rules are black and white. What are the rules, though? We don't know. He also says it's fun to kill sinners. More on that later. The last bit of important information is that they're moving up the extermination, which is, of course, the opposite of what Charlie wants. While Charlie's gone, Vaggie and the rest of the side characters make a new commercial that doesn't get aired and gets cut off by a news report at the end.
Welcome to the Hazbin Hotel.
I can't believe it.
Oh, Mike.
I was on TV!
This plotline was mostly just pointless Tumblr-esque shenanigans. I thought it was going to be worth noting that Vaggie makes a deal with Alastor to make the commercial, but nothing comes of it. In this season, at least. Even if they do get another season, I'm not watching it. I'm not doing this to myself again.
No! No! Alright, time to kill yourself.
Unless you guys want me to watch it.
Whatever it is, I'll do it!
Then we get a little ending scene with Adam and Lute where we find out that an angel was killed during the last extermination, and it's the first time this has happened. Alright, that's episode 1. The rest of the summary won't be this detailed because really, not much does happen. There was just a lot of establishing information in this first episode. Episode 2 begins with Charlie and Vaggie planning to exploit the public sphere to get more residents at the hotel. We then meet the most pivotal character in this whole series, Sir Pentious. Basically, he shows up looking like a 60s Batman villain, declaring himself to be Alastor's nemesis, but Alastor claims to have no idea who he is.
Remember me, Jake?
No.
Then we get to see Alastor's real nemesis, I guess, the TV demon at VoxTech. I think they're rivals. It's not really in the show all that much. Anyway, there's some showbiz drama. Seems like VoxTech is exploiting people's fear to make money. We meet Angel's boss, Valentino, who is angry about Angel moving out. Vox is furious to find out about Alastor's return after 7 years because apparently he owes Vox much more than money. Whatever that means. And Alastor almost beat Vox in a fight or something. Back at the hotel, Alastor quickly defeats Pentious.
Thanks for another forgettable experience.
Alastor summons some, I don't know, golems or something to help fix the damage Pentious did to the hotel, and Angel starts immediately harassing them. Fun. Pretty sure I'm supposed to like this character, but I don't. We get a song that, again, reveals no new information, except, to be fair, that the reason Vox hates Alastor is because he turned down an invitation to join VoxTech, which is unsurprisingly petty. But the rest of the song is just a waste of time. We didn't need a whole song for one new detail. VoxTech wants to ensure that Charlie never strikes a deal with Alastor, so they send Pentious to the hotel undercover. And of course, Charlie lets him in immediately, despite the protestations of everyone else. But Charlie did puppy eyes, and I guess that worked on them.
Aren't you supposed to protect this place?
Consider the safety of the crew.
The safety of the crew doesn't matter.
Anyways, Pentious' cover is immediately blown. Then after being betrayed by VoxTech, Charlie sings an embarrassingly juvenile song about apologizing, and his 7-minute character arc is concluded. He's a changed Snake Man.
I hated that song.
Sorry.
Why are you so lame?
Me too, Nifty. Me too. Episode 3 just really dragged. Half of the episode was just there to have the main characters make an appearance. They didn't really do anything. It reminds me of some of my old fan fiction where I wanted to cover multiple storylines and perspectives, but there was always one I was not invested in at all. And it really showed. Anyways, in said plotline, there's tension in the hotel, so Charlie suggests preschool trust exercises. What a surprise. Angel suggests BDSM. Again, what a surprise.
What a surprise!
But Vaggie and Charlie are both disgusted, which is a little surprising. They're in hell. I know they've seen what goes on out there. They acknowledge how they need to be united and don't have any runtime to spare.
We don't have time for this!
So Vaggie suggests fighting together to become closer because it worked for her, which is kind of foreshadowing, I guess. But we don't even get to see a montage of this bonding because the 2 allotted songs are being used in the episode's other plotline. Everything happens off screen, but by the end of the episode, everyone is magically friends. Until the next episode. Alastor and the other overlords are the main focus of the other plotline. We meet Zestiel, which keeps autocorrecting to Zestier, and he talks like Allura from the first episode of Voltron Legendary Defender. So, obnoxious, fakey old English.
The weather doth become this fine day.
I see you're having some trouble with your accent.
His dialogue doesn't even make sense sometimes. I at least knew what Allura was trying to say. Zesty alludes to some rumors that while Alastor was gone for those 7 years, he fell to holy arms. Now, Zesty's dialogue is already a little bit confusing, but I don't know what he meant by this. Did he mean heavenly weapons? A heavenly lover? Was he beaten by? Did he fall to holy arms? Or is he just eating those arms? We may never know. Earlier, Pentious lost his minion privileges, and for some plot convenience reason, Vaggie gave them to Alastor, and because they have such good security, one sneaks into the meeting room. Velvet, who's with Voxtech, barges in and reveals that an angel died during the extermination, so obviously they should just immediately go to war with Heaven. And Zestiel says, in fake old-timey English, "Girl, we don't have enough information," which is a fair point, and Heaven could just retaliate and exterminate all of them, which is also a good point.
I'm gonna kill all of you!
Carmine ends the meeting, then reveals to Zestiel that she killed the angel to protect her family, and that she and Vaggie, who joins the song from the other plotline, would do anything for their loved ones, even kill. And the egg minion that, again, no one noticed, reports all of this to Alastor. Episode 4 is fun because I had to ask my very conservative mother for her Amazon pin since this episode was locked due to adult content. Thankfully, she didn't ask what I was watching.
What are you doing?
Jeff, watching a little TV.
So yeah, this one focuses on Angel Dust and his career in adult entertainment. Charlie follows Angel to the studio where he works and sets the place on fire. Angel laments the destructive cycle he's in and then sings a song with Husk about how they're both losers, but it's okay. Nothing really consequential to the overall story happens in this episode, so it's kind of a waste of time. However, there is some very conflicting messaging about agency, adult entertainment, being yourself, and what's worth living for, but more on that later. Episode 5 is at least slightly less irrelevant than episode 4. We meet Lucifer, who's this whimsical, insecure circus dandy, and he's obsessed with rubber ducks for some completely irrelevant reason.
Tell me, what exactly is the function of a rubber duck?
Suddenly, Charlie's incompetence makes perfect sense. There's this weird dad rivalry over Charlie between Alastor and Lucifer. The side plot has loan sharks that are actually sharks, which I love. Anything with sharks, really, I'll give a pass to. Anyways, Alastor is powerful, Angel is still doing drugs, and there's sharks. It's the best episode. The only important information comes at the end where Lucy points out that these sinners are terrible.
Sinners are violent psychopaths, hell-bent on causing as much pain and destruction as they can.
They have free will and did this.
I will devour each and every one of you!
What do you have to say to that, Mr. Jones?
And Heaven really isn't all that great. They're close-minded and have lots of rules. So why are you trying to get out there? Regardless of the excellent points he brought up, none of that's important because the reason he doubted his incompetent daughter's terrible plan is because he had stopped dreaming himself and needed Charlie to inspire him, which could be sweet, just not in this context. More on that later. The song is kind of a jam though, they both have great voices and they sound nice together. Episode 6, we get our first glimpse of Heaven. It's clean, beautiful, everyone is polite, and the show says that everyone is attractive. I don't think they are, but the show does say that. There's no crime, and no one has any bad days. It's heaven! Then they meet in Angel Court to discuss whether or not a soul in hell can be redeemed to heaven via the Hazbin Hotel. Which seems like something you should have done before advertising your unproven services.
You know what plausible deniability means, kid.
No?
Perfect.
The side plot is Cherry Bomb taking everyone to a sex club called Consent. You'd think they wouldn't have consent in hell, but okay. Angel continues to make some really bad decisions.
I'm afraid I had a teeny weeny little bit too much to drink.
But doesn't make as many bad decisions as he could, so that's character growth, I guess. And he keeps Nifty out of trouble, instead of fixing his own problems. Charlie says this is evidence that a soul can be redeemed and a person can change. And that's when we find out that no one in heaven knows exactly why they're there, except that they pass divine judgment before going to heaven or hell. I mean, they're asking questions, but not the right ones. Also, I think it's pretty obvious why people get sent to which place, but alright, girl. Charlie gets angry, then she and Emily, who's basically Charlie but an angel, sing a song about how heaven doesn't have to follow its own rules. I assume this is in reference to Adam, who is, of course, a dick. But it really looks like he and Lute are outliers here. More on all of that later. Important to note, but too much to get into right here. And Sarah, the High Seraphim of Heaven, really creative name there, says it was a really hard decision to make, to do the exterminations, but she thought it was necessary. And it's revealed that Vaggie was an exterminator, and for some reason this causes a lot of unnecessary relational drama that adds nothing to the wider narrative, so it's a complete melodramatic waste. I mean, melodrama's always a waste, it's just more egregious here. Episode 7, Charlie is very surprisingly very upset with Vaggie, even though her whole thing is believing the best of people even when they're trying their hardest to prove they're still the worst, and forgiving everyone immediately. Alastor makes a deal with Charlie, and he tells her that Carmine knows how to kill angels, so Vaggie goes to get that info out of Carmine. And she says that angels fight like they can't get hurt, which is interesting, but again, just a moment of potential. This scene is just there to tell the characters that they can defend themselves from heaven, even though we, the audience, already knew this information. And it just wasn't revealed in an interesting way either, didn't give us any new information alongside that. So again, what's the point? Carmine also tells us in her song that you have to have a good reason to fight, and that the only good reason is fighting for someone you love. Alastor tells Charlie that smiling is important because it encourages your friends and throws your enemies off. Which is an interesting point, but Alastor hasn't had the best of poker faces this whole show, but alright, man. The fun part of this episode is when we go to Cannibal Town to get help for some reason.
Your neighbors are murdering people.
So the idea is to convince the cannibals to help defend the hotel in exchange for eating their fill of angels, which Charlie acts like she's not okay with, but still goes along with it. She also has her girl boss arc here when she comes into her own power and has to look inside herself to see what a girl boss she already was. And then she sings a song so whimsical that all the cannibals join her. Wow, so much more on all of that later. Oh, and Vaggie and Charlie, of course, make up at the end.
I'm sitting here watching the show and I could be out cleaning garbage can.
Episode 8! The finale! We did it! We finally made it! Why do I write summaries this long? We open to see Voxtech, who we haven't seen for quite a while, watching everything we've already seen on their security cameras. And we cut to them quite a few times throughout the episode, and Vox makes completely irrelevant comments. Seems like a waste of time, but okay. It's the night before the attack. Somehow 6 months have passed already. Really nice of Adam to give them a heads up of exactly when he's going to attack, but okay.
Ninja tip, do not announce attack.
Anyways, Charlie said that she's seen the good in all of them.
What are you talking about?
And whatever redemption really means, she knows that they all really tried. Did they, though? She also says,
Live tonight, however you want.
Because morals don't mean anything if you're gonna die tomorrow, I guess. Charlie complains about the inconsistency in heaven, but then says this? What? It's the next day, heaven attacks. There's a lot of meaningless fight scenes.
Fight scene, we're gonna have a fight scene.
And because the rules of this divine magic system are unclear, it's hard to understand who has the upper hand or not, so we have to rely on the characters themselves, just telling us.
Time for Anakin! I have the high ground!
Alastor had to retreat because I guess Adam got the upper hand there, and then we get the best scene in the entire show. To me, this almost makes up for having watched the rest of the show, but not really. Pentious dramatically kisses Cherry, he's been crushing on her this whole time, and then he boards his airship in a last-ditch effort to save everyone, knowing that he'll probably die. And he does. Immediately.
That was the best part.
To be clear, his death wasn't the best part. The best part was him being willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of everyone else. I don't know where he learned that. Vaggie and Lute fight, as do Lucifer and Adam. Lucifer is so powerful, it makes one wonder why he hasn't popped in to help before. Anyways, when Lute and Adam are beaten, their opponents say they're willing to let them live because they're merciful. But it's said in a very cruel way. It just doesn't seem like actual mercy. And as things come to a close, the hotel is destroyed, Lute gets away, and Adam is stabbed by Nifty. So we wrap things up with the guys at Voxtech talking about how great it is that Alastor is gone, now they can be the top overlords. Alastor is not gone, however, and he says he's gonna be the top overlord and also reveals himself immediately. The hotel is also rebuilt immediately. A lot of things in this show happen immediately. What was the point of having him disappear or having the hotel destroyed if they're coming right back? More on that later. In the last song, when they're not singing about how great Charlie is, They sing about still wanting to be redeemed for some reason, even after the attack, and no matter what happens, at least they're all together.
If anything, they're stronger together, just like us.
Couldn't find the remote.
Pentious is redeemed and ends up in heaven, and if Adam doesn't end up in hell as an official resident after this, I have even more questions. Anyways, the show ends with Lute finding Lilith, who is chilling on a beach. Lute says, Adam's dead, just like you wanted, but if you want to stay in heaven, you better take care of whatever Charlie's doing. She's disrupting the foundations of heaven. And that's it.
The show is over. Man, this is terrible. Those guys are really overpaid.
I don't think the cannibals actually did anything in this episode, which means the entire previous episode was kind of pointless. Just like the rest of the show. I'd say more on that later, but you know what? More on that now. Breakdown. Story. Point number 1, Charlie's plan. Now, I don't fault Charlie at all for wanting to improve the conditions of her people, except that's not what she really wants. She just wants to leave. So let's start with that. Why leave? According to the story, these people have free will. They are choosing to act like this. People in hell can change, as we've seen with Pentious, and there are parts of hell that are well kept, like Cannibal Town.
Cannibals. Hundreds of cannibals.
So why is she so focused on leaving? It is possible for these sinners to choose to change and for them to choose to fix up the place. And if she successfully revamped all of hell, heaven wouldn't really have an excuse or even a reason for the exterminations. Seems like it would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone, assuming the stone is made of angelic steel. Unfortunately, she hasn't thought this through and is set on leaving. But why heaven? And how does she expect to convince residents to want to go there? Her only experience with heaven is the exterminations, and the only current resident she's talked to is Adam, well, and Lute. At the very least, she should be cautious or distrustful of heaven, and since she's a very all-or-nothing kind of person, it would make the most sense for her to outright hate heaven. Why would any sane person in this situation think, hey, you know that group that wants us all dead? Well, I built this hotel, and if it impresses them enough, we can all move in with them. That would solve all our problems. Imagine the response if anyone had that idea in the 1940s.
Listen, don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right.
And on the other hand, wouldn't there also be a lot of people in heaven that have been personally victimized by the people in hell?
How many of you have ever felt personally victimized by Regina George?
There's probably murder victims, other kinds of victims, a lot of victims. There's probably people that the cannibals ate in heaven. They're finally free from that, and you want to just let all those people move in with them? Isn't that kind of messed up? To be fair, overpopulation is very briefly brought up, but what does that even mean? Is hell running out of room, or are there just too many evil people? Which is concerning. And even if rehabilitation worked, that's great, do that. But again, why leave? It would make more sense if her project was to revamp hell and, I don't know, outdo heaven somehow, show them up. Is she just set on moving there because heaven is a good place and hell is a bad place? And in the Hazbin Hotel world, what does that even mean? This brings us to story point number 2. Morality? Because what does that even mean? This isn't a story about good versus evil. This story questions the very concepts of good and evil and asks what they are and what they mean. Or at least it tries to. It does not do a very good job.
This is a family show.
In episode 6, Charlie and Emily sing the lines, "If hell is forever, then heaven must be a lie. If angels can do whatever and remain in the sky, the rules are shades of gray when you don't do as you say."
Got him.
Now, I understand what they're trying to say, but it's really not the gotcha moment they think it is. Unfortunately for them, this observation comes right after a whole scene where we find out that literally no one in heaven, Adam, Sarah, Emily, no one knows what the rules are. And you're also telling me that in 10,000 years,
10,000 years.
10,000 years!
10,000 years on it.
no one in heaven or hell thought to ask about this or question this in any way? Not a single person beside Little Miss Clouds for Brains? Yeah, sure.
is a complete moron, and complete morons are rare.
It's not outright stated, but it would seem that it's some sort of works-based afterlife, and I do know that in Hell of a Boss there are angels that try to help people on Earth do the right thing, whatever that is, so...
Don't listen to that guy. He's trying to lead you down the path of righteousness. I'm gonna lead you down the path that rocks.
I feel like that really should have played into Charlie's plan somehow, but okay. The only thing we do find out is that people face divine judgment and end up in either heaven or hell. But no one is asking what divine judgment is or what that means. That seems like the most important factor here, and no one cares. How does Charlie know the angels can do whatever and remain in heaven if she doesn't know what the rules are? The angels are still there, so maybe they are following the rules. Actually, in the first episode's lore dump, we're told that angels shield everyone from evil. The purpose of the exterminations is to protect the good in heaven from the evil in hell, so maybe they are following the rules. Regardless, Adam is still a straw man. Not only is Adam an outlier, but the rest of heaven wasn't even aware of the exterminations to begin with. The story is pitting the worst of heaven against the best of hell, which is pathetic. Just like the best of hell. At first glance, and I think this is what they were going for, it appears that Charlie is questioning heaven and calling it out for its hypocrisy and having an unforgiving system of rules that it can break at its own discretion. But, since admittedly no one knows what the rules are, we don't have any idea whether or not heaven is following its own rules, and Charlie is the one with her own internal system of unforgiving yet inconsistent moral rules that she holds everyone else to, and heaven doesn't fit into that. So she's actually advocating for and doing something that she's also claiming to fight against. And if her argument is that heaven's rules are wrong, that's a fine thing to explore, but what is she advocating for as a replacement system of rules?
Introduce a little anarchy. Upset the established order.
Because she is advocating for rules, her rules, she just doesn't agree with heaven. However, these are her people, and this is what she calls progress. Maybe heaven is in the wrong, but she's not experienced or wise enough to be able to mentor them and guide them in the right direction. As an example of this, she seriously tries to equate having a drink with getting very drunk.
Are you really telling me you've never had a drink with friends at the end of a hard day?
We're appealing to your sense of decency. Yeah, let's do it.
Another drink! I'm full of alcohol!
Round 12!
Oh, look here, you drugged-out communist.
Oh, yeah, keep them coming.
I love alcohol!
Heavenly people, what more do you need to see?
She clearly lacks the judgment necessary to even lead her own people, much less try to reprimand heaven. Furthermore, if Pentious ended up in heaven, does that mean that heaven's rules really were right all along, or does that mean that Pentious was wrong to change the way he did? It could have been really interesting to have Charlie being mentored by someone in heaven. They hear her out, think her plan has some merit, but see that she needs guidance. Charlie could mature, and she could also share the perspective of hell's inhabitants with heaven. The problem is, Charlie isn't humble enough to do this. She simultaneously thinks heaven is wrong and mean, but is also obsessed with heaven and wants to live there and be just like them. That's some sort of complex that I don't have the professional expertise to diagnose.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
Let's look at some moral issues individually and see how the show, and Charlie, handles them. During one of Charlie's rehabilitation exercises, she implies that drugs and premarital sex are wrong.
Where's an innocent kid I can sell crack to? It'll make you cool like me.
Say no to drugs. I'm off to not have sexual intercourse before marriage.
Yes! Oh, bravo!
Wow, who wrote this?
It's great, right?
I can't believe that worked. I didn't even know what I was saying. No, what you said made no sense at all.
First of all, what about her and Vaggie? Not to make any assumptions, but they do sleep in the same bed.
Their love is vile and blasphemous.
Hot as though.
But more importantly, when Charlie was trying to prove to heaven that a soul can be redeemed, everyone was getting drunk in a sex club.
I see the club has a sex room. If you'll excuse me, I'm off to not have sexual intercourse before marriage.
I'll admit consent is a good name for a sex club.
That might be the nastiest thing I've ever seen.
I'm gonna get a disease!
Nasty.
Throughout the show, Charlie and other characters are grossed out by Angel, same, which I guess doesn't technically mean she thinks he's in the wrong, it just means she doesn't agree with his nasty choices.
I mean, I have a lot of nasty friends. My uncle was nasty. I'm basically honorary nasty.
But then, isn't that judgmental? Is being judgmental and telling someone they're wrong what makes heaven evil? Charlie is very judgmental. Is the problem that heaven doesn't approve of hell's activities? Charlie doesn't approve of heaven either, and some of hell's activities. And the whole show is about Charlie wanting people to change so they can get into heaven, but why would they need to change unless they were wrong? If it's just preferences, what's the big deal? But if they are wrong, how do we even know? And how are they supposed to change since no one knows what the rules are? What are they supposed to be doing instead? If you put off bad behavior, you have to put on something else. And if you don't know what that something else is, you are just going to be lost and not have anything to do, and probably default back to your old behavior. Are they supposed to emulate heaven, meaning heaven was actually right all along?
Oh no! I just want consistency!
Furthermore, are you even supposed to change? In episode 4, we get the absolute worst song I've ever heard in my entire life. Oh wait, scratch that. Happy by Pharrell is the absolute worst song I've ever heard in my entire life.
I hated that song!
But Loser is a close second. And basically the premise of that song is, everyone's terrible, you're not unique for being terrible, but as long as you acknowledge it and accept who you are and just be yourself, then it's okay. But what does it mean to be yourself? Specifically in a world where no one knows what the rules are? And how does change and growth factor into this? Are you already yourself? Do you have to change to become yourself? How do you know you're truly being yourself? And are you being untrue to yourself if you change? How does Charlie's desire to change everyone fit in with Loser's message of be yourself?
So what's our plan? We don't have one because we're being ourselves!
I think Loser's "we all make mistakes, it's okay, that's just you being you" was probably supposed to be in contrast to Adam and Luke's claim that angels don't make mistakes. Maybe?
Oh no! Undo! Undo!
You can't undo who you are.
So I guess you can be a terrible person as long as you acknowledge it, but that doesn't make sense because we don't know if angels do or don't make mistakes since we don't know what the rules are.
What rules? We didn't see any rules.
And because Adam was created to be a jerk, this was before free will, he had no choice in the matter.
I can't help it.
That's just him being his purest self.
What up, baby?
So is he a terrible person or not? And by what standards? And if Adam being a jerk from the get-go was supposed to be the proof that heaven was bad all along, can I direct your attention to hell? Because it's much, much worse.
I should kill as many things as possible.
Speaking of free will, however, is just having free will in the Hazbin Hotel world the moral good here? Because in this story, Lucifer's supposed to be the good guy for giving everyone free will, but if that's the case, then you have to confront all the suffering that free will forced on everyone. Eve didn't have free will until after she ate the fruit Lucifer gave her. Nice going, Lucy. Just looks worse and worse. Wait a second. How was Lilith able to recognize that Adam was a jerk, and how was she able to leave him if she didn't have free will yet? I guess her girl boss powers transcend even free will itself. Lilith is the ultimate girl boss. Anyways, is free will worth it when it comes at the price of all this evil and suffering and the actual creation of hell?
What will you learn? What will you learn? That your actions have consequences!
While episode 4 briefly brings up the idea of searching for purpose and finding something to live for, we get an answer in episode 7 in the form of a pretty jammin' song, Out for Love. And with all the negative things I have to say about the show, I do want to point out that I really, really like Carmine's design. But anyways, Out for Love tells us that the reason you have to keep on living is for your found family. Except they're already dead, and so are you, and you're in hell.
I thought they were dead!
Far worse, Trixandra. They're nearly almost dead, but not quite.
So morality in this universe, I guess, is doing things for the love of another. But if that's the case, then why is Sarah wrong? I thought love is love. Is there a wrong way to love?
I don't like this question.
Does Sarah not love Emily? Does she also not love her people? And if this is the true message of the show, then we needed to see more of heaven and needed to see that there was no love, no found family, none of that, to show us that's why they were in the wrong. Or you could have used Sarah and Emily to help Charlie and the show explore a potentially complex situation, but what do I know? More concerningly, what is the story trying to say about killing and cannibalism?
Come on,
fellas. We're going murdering!
One of the main plot points is Charlie trying to defend Hell from the extermination because those are her people and she doesn't want them to die. Again.
You like being dead.
That's what they said about being alive!
So Heaven is wrong because it wants to protect itself. They're killing residents of Hell and they're having fun doing it, but while Hell is full of murderers, perverts, and cannibals, they're also protecting themselves, killing residents of Heaven, and having fun while doing it. Nifty loves stabbing.
Hey, not him!
And Vaggie longingly talks about how long it's been since she stabbed someone.
I mean, personally, I'm excited. It's been a long time since I stabbed anyone and really meant it.
So even though the show seems to be trying to say that morality is more complex than just a system of hardline rules, it's quite unnuanced. And if you're trying to show those complexities, then you must explore the villains more, and they also have to not only be nuanced, but also not 100% in the wrong. But instead we get...
Listen, you little wiseacre. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Adam and Heaven are just always in the wrong, and there's just nothing interesting about that, first of all, and it also makes no sense in this story. Having both sides doing basically the same thing, even for basically the same reasons, but then one side is unequivocally right and the other is unequivocally wrong, it defeats the purpose of trying to explore the complexities of morality. Charlie's the one insisting on an unforgiving system of rules, and she's confused because the morality in Hazbin Hotel appears to be more nuanced than her strict expectations. And with the cannibalism, that was just a really weird thing to include when you're trying to get me to think that the nice, clean, cannibal-free place is where all the bad guys are. It is confusing that Charlie is uncomfortable with cannibalism, which is good, we should all be uncomfortable with it, but why is she uncomfortable with it? If she grew up surrounded by this, shouldn't she think that everything going on in Hell is normal, including cannibalism?
Normal? What do you know about normal?
And in the Hazbin Hotel world, is cannibalism wrong or not? And where do they get the bodies they're eating? I mean, no one can die again without angelic steel, so maybe they just take turns eating each other?
How about some nice pinky fingers instead?
My stomach was making the rumblies that only hands would satisfy.
How does this work? I guess that's not that important. But especially if Charlie personally does think it's wrong, why is it a triumphant moment to have her go against her own conscience to manipulate this group of people that she finds morally reprehensible just to achieve her own ends? And at the same time, really? Cannibals are the worst people that are in Hell?
Sure, Jan.
Your sex club may be called consent, but I'm willing to bet that there's a lot of people down there because they don't know what that is.
Your fantasies can't ever be quenched, can they?
On the other hand, and on a positive note, Attack on Titan, specifically Season 4, does complex morality very well. Throughout the show, there are many situations that don't have a clear right or wrong solution.
I know what it is. The woman I shot back there. I bet she was a really kind person. I pulled that trigger so easily. I'm
a killer. And now that your hands have been soaked in blood, the person you once were is gone for good. And you shouldn't regret it for 1 second. Because if you'd chosen to keep your hands clean, Jean would be a corpse on a cart right now.
And as more information gets revealed about what's actually going on and what the real conflict is, it becomes increasingly difficult to determine who is in the right and, as the viewer, who you're rooting for.
I don't want to do this!
Armin! Why are you betraying us? I don't understand, Connie! We're supposed to be on the same side no matter what! We still are on the same side, Samuel!
As you get to know the characters, their motivations, see the rampant propaganda, and learn more about the bigger picture, you can understand who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. And even with the various perspectives and sides of the conflict, whatever they believe, even within these groups, there are both good and evil individuals. And each side has reason to call the other evil and think they're the ones in the right. In Hazbin Hotel, it really seems like whatever Charlie wants to do is morally right and whoever she disagrees with is wrong. Moral complexity is just rules for thee, but not for me. And actually, it would make sense that she has a skewed sense of morality. She grew up in Hell. Of course she doesn't think it's all that bad. This is normal to her.
This is normal. This is normal for gnomes. Scrub.
So who knows what morality is in the Hazbin Hotel world? Which is weird, because I thought that was the whole point of the show. You're just gonna give us good is bad and bad is good, but not offer any explanation of what standard you're using to differentiate good from evil or any reason to take you seriously.
Today I learned that morality is relative.
Oh, and in episode 2, for some reason, it's okay that Vaggie and Charlie are going to exploit the public sphere to get them to come to the hotel, but then it's wrong for Vox Tech to exploit the public sphere to make money. I guess exploitation is okay if you're doing it for the right reasons. Whatever right is. See, morality is complex. It's not just that Charlie is always right. Point number 3, and for some reason the point I'm the most passionate about, the destruction of the hotel was meaningless. In Disney's Encanto, spoilers, sorry, Mirabelle wants to prove her worth and find her place in her family by trying to keep their house and the magic from being destroyed. Alas, despite her best efforts, the house is destroyed. But it needed to be. The house represented the strength of their familial relationships. And while they had a good foundation, oh hey, the songs in Encanto serve a narrative purpose, unlike in Hazbin Hotel. But anyways, the family had a good foundation, but their house became built on a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings, and they had to rebuild their understanding of what it means to be a family to become strong again. So the house being destroyed was actually very meaningful to both the story and the characters, and the rebuilding also showed them all able to work together and appreciate each other's differing gifts.
I might cry if I had tear ducts!
In Father of the Bride 2, Steve Martin's character, who I've forgotten the name of, is dealing with a lot of familial transitions in his life. And when faced with the destruction of the house where he raised his family, in a sentimental yet financially insane decision, he impulsively buys his house back for an extra $100 grand. I mean, how much money is this guy making? Anyways, this was a climactic moment for him, representing his acknowledgement that this phase in his life wasn't over yet, which is kind of weird because the story set up that his problem was not being able to adjust to inevitable changes in his life, just like the first movie. But unlike the first movie, it ended with the story confirming that he was right for not wanting to move on and adjust, but okay. Point is, the potential destruction of the house was symbolic and meaningful to the story. In the current draft of one of the stories I'm working on, I have the destruction of a building symbolize the loss of status and stability for one of the characters. It's not just a cool, dramatic scene. In Hazbin Hotel, the hotel is destroyed and immediately rebuilt. The hotel meant something to Charlie personally, but narratively it really only served as a location that the characters sometimes were. The destruction was just thrown in there to create drama, the facade of a dramatic scene with no weight to it. What did the destruction mean to Charlie, or the story? Perhaps seeing the hotel destroyed so easily could have made her realize how flimsy her idea is, and how she really didn't know what redemption was, and how she was making empty promises to uninterested people. You know, reflection, character growth. None of that here, I guess. Meaninglessness aside,
nothing needs anything!
It wasn't even that dramatic. It was rebuilt immediately. No stakes, no consequences. It was boring and a waste of time. Which is what I say about the whole show, actually. Point number 4, and possibly my shortest point. What was the point of Vox? Maybe he'll play a larger part later on in the story, but right now he was just there. And he had a lot of screen time for someone who added nothing to the story, although I guess I could say that about most of the characters. What was the point of the radio versus TV thing? Was this a commentary on new versus old technology? Consumerism? Voyeurism? Media control and lies? Crappy TV? Big tech? Something about anti-capitalism, I assume? It just didn't mean anything. It was just a gimmick, a meaningless gimmick. Technically, this could have fit in the upcoming point on wasted time or even the character section, but I was more focused on what Vox meant to the show, so that's why it's here. Also, Alastor would be devastated to find out he's the star of a television show of all things. Point number 5, and my last point in the story section. Nifty killing Adam meant nothing.
Holy!
What was the point? Was his death supposed to be meaningless and confusing, just like the rest of the show?
That's super lame styles, yo!
Why have an inconsequential side character kill the big bad guy of the whole show? Defeating the villain is an important moment in the story. Unless it's supposed to be kicking a man while he's down. He's so completely unimportant that he can't even have a meaningful death scene. But is that what they were going for with Adam? I really think it was just to make a stabbing joke. And I love stabbing jokes. They're hilarious. But when your show is this preachy, you gotta be a good writer to make stabby jokes work in between all the preaching. His death wasn't even built up to, it just happened. And you didn't have to kill him to solve your problem. Actually, it's not going to solve the problem. It wasn't just Adam that was against sinners coming to heaven and was advocating for the exterminations. If anything, killing him will probably make relations with heaven worse. His death didn't even have any deeper meaning either. The death of an antagonist like Adam should have done something like signify both the end of the physical conflict and also maybe the internal conflict of a character, or at least have something to do with a theme. But it doesn't relate to the rest of the story at all. It just happened, like everything else on this show. And the only reason he even needed to die was because Charlie didn't like him, and she, for some reason, didn't believe in him.
The philosophical implications are tremendous, of course.
Story-wise, it's an easy and uncreative solution, and it's also an exceptionally bad solution to your narrative conflict because that conflict has revolved at least somewhat around how it's wrong to kill. Kind of. For some people.
You're a hypocrite and a murderer!
The more I think about it, the way Adam dies kind of makes sense, but not in the way they intended. It's meaningless, like the rest of the story, and to keep Charlie from potentially looking bad, Charlie's not the one to have killed him, even though she wanted it to happen. So she gets to look like a badass while getting what she wants, and also leaving her hands relatively clean, in her mind. His death also solved nothing. It distracted from the real issues and just made things worse, which is exactly how Charlie handles problems. She focuses on the wrong thing, ignores the real issues, and makes everything worse. Unintentional, but hilarious. This could easily have been interesting. Charlie wants Adam out of the way. She really wants him dead, but is too nice, and by that I mean too much of a coward to admit that, to herself. But Adam isn't the problem, or at least he isn't the biggest problem. It's her own people. Let's say Adam died and then things did get worse. Here his death could serve as a way to force Charlie to do some self-reflecting. She sees that it didn't solve the problem. She could learn how to properly identify and solve problems and somehow grow. Or she could dig her heels in, refuse to acknowledge any mistakes she made, and continue making things worse, which is also an interesting way to handle a character as long as their consequences, positive and negative, are in line with their actions. I suspect, though, that we're going to get Charlie doing absolutely zero self-reflection, but she'll still be rewarded positively for this behavior. Section 2. Storytelling. Point number 1. What the actual heck is the tone of this story? What is the genre supposed to be? Is it serious? Comedy? Dramedy? Dark comedy? I want to analyze the story for what it is. The problem is, the plot wants to ask these very serious questions about morality, but then also have jokes about murder and orgies and drugs, and those are the good guys, supposedly. So the story is telling me that it's serious, but showing me that I shouldn't take it seriously. And I think that's what the problem is. It's not that you can't have light moments in a more serious story, or vice versa, but you cannot make light of what you want me to take seriously.
Oh no! I just want consistency!
Animated shows absolutely can ask serious questions, but your tone has to be consistent. Anime like Death Note and Attack on Titan are much more serious in their tone, and while the tension is occasionally lifted by a lighter moment, these lighter moments never make light of the questions these shows ask. It's been a while since I've watched Death Note, and I'm not rewatching it just to find an example, so we're using Attack on Titan again. In Attack on Titan, a lot of the lighter moments serve to show us who these characters are and how they deal with the thought of their inevitable death. Like this scene, where they're backed into a corner, they have one last chance to get out, they're probably not going to make it, and they're probably going to die. Which is most of the show.
Their weak spots are not too far above eye level.
Back of the head to the nape of the neck.
Worst comes to worst, you can always just shove one of these up their ass. That's the other weak spot.
Are you serious? That's news to me.
Did I miss a day of training or something?
Come on, knock it off, Rhina. You want your final words to be an ass joke?
Absolutely, I do.
Here, while the dialogue is funny, we can also see that Reiner's the kind of guy who wants to keep everyone's spirits up, Sasha and Connie share one half of a brain cell between them, and Horseface is trying to keep everyone focused. It's a brief, funny moment that doesn't detract from the overall episode or the show because it's grounded in what's going on and adds useful information. On the flip side, I've used at least one clip from Nigel and Marmalade, and it's really cute and funny. Go watch it. Stop watching this. Go watch it right now. It's got a lot of dark humor, or what I clumsily call, it's funny because don't do that humor.
It's not very nice to use a picnic to conceal a subterranean spike trap. Effective, though.
It's not funny that Patricia killed that guy because murder is funny. It's funny because don't do that. So I guess there was a moral lesson after all. But because the tone is light and comedic, I know not to take it too seriously. Sure, Marmalade sort of lightly reprimands Patricia for killing that guy, the way a parent might correct their child for rolling their eyes, and Marmalade even directly says,
Patricia, stealing is wrong. Fun though, isn't it?
Stealing is wrong, etc. Take it. Now, can I have my hands back? I have a certain gesture I'd like to share with you.
But after the whole ordeal, they casually go back to Patricia's place for some fondant fancies. If I was supposed to take this seriously, I would be forced to consider why I'm taking ethical advice from Patricia, the thief and murderer, Nigel, who's mutilated and killed his fair share of victims, and Marmalade, who somewhat disapproves but ultimately serves as an enabler. But because the tone is comedic and not serious in any way, I can overlook that and just laugh. The Sam and Max games have similar yet more politically charged humor to Nigel and Marmalade, and now that I think about it, some of the humor in Sam and Max is specifically joking about something that I would assume they think is wrong, not just because don't do that. One of my favorite moments is during the episode Abe Lincoln Must Die, where Sam and President Max finally get access to the war room, which triggers a musical number sung by the Secret Service about how great war is.
War. What's it good for? What is it good for? Strengthens the economy.
I was so caught off guard by this the first time I heard it. Anyways, now do you think this is saying war good? Or is it more likely that this is a commentary on how some people in the government seem all too eager to start another war and are possibly a little too missile happy?
Who cares? I'm the president of the U.S. Let's go bomb someone into oblivion.
So there is a moral message after all. But it's not like that was the point of the whole episode and it wasn't all overly serious, preachy, and contradictory like Hazbin Hotel. It works because it's dark humor. Max says stuff like this.
It's like I'm always telling people, don't think of it as a bullet wound, think of it as a transfusion opportunity.
Sam says stuff like this.
You crack me up, little buddy.
And I get to laugh. You know, if anything, even though it's wildly inconsistent, Hazbin Hotel seems to spend most of its time in the blue comedy genre, which is a bold choice for a show just dying to pass moral judgment on everyone except Charlie while also trying to recapture the childlike spirit of the shows we all grew up with. It's not childlike, it's childish. It's not whimsical, fun, and nostalgic, it's immature, crass, and stupid.
Fun for the whole family. I gotta tell my wife about this.
Point number 2, foreshadowing and plot twists. Carmine says it's obvious Vaggie was an angel because she wielded angelic steel and had an X over her eye. Carmine is an angelic arms dealer, and she killed that angel with angelic steel, so she wields angelic steel? Is this foreshadowing that she's also an angel? And so is everyone she's ever sold a weapon to? The X over Vaggie's eye was also always just a part of her design. The angel backstory is the only part that's new. Cherry also has an X on her eye. Is this foreshadowing? Is she too an angel? Is my keychain an angel? Is my purse an angel? Why do I have so many things that look like this? Is everyone just an angel? Am I an angel? Anyways, Carmine's comment really seemed either mocking towards the viewer, as in, I can't believe you missed something so obvious, or like it's trying to gaslight you into believing that anything in this show was foreshadowed. And it's not even like this twist meant anything to the story, it was just there to create drama between her and Charlie. And the drama was only possible because Charlie acted totally out of character.
Is like this whole thing a joke or what?
A good example of foreshadowing is Attack on Titan. Again. The whole show, actually. One scene in particular that stood out to me was when they're hiding in Castle Utgard. Was it Utgard or Utgard? And they find some canned rations with some mysterious writing on them that no one is able to read. Except for Ymir. And Reiner in particular seems concerned by this. I'm not going to tell you what that means, but both Ymir's ability to read the writing and Reiner's concern foreshadow some pretty interesting and meaningful plot twists. And for a good example of a plot twist, surprise, surprise, I'm not going to use Attack on Titan, because you should just go watch or read it.
Both is good.
Instead, I'm going to use Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which I also recommend, but if you are going to watch it, skip this part because I am going to be spoiling the best part of the story. Anyways, Michael Caine, before his illustrious career as Batman's butler, plays a gentlemanly con man who scams rich women out of their extra jewels. But he's concerned about the arrival of the American con artist known as the Jackal. Steve Martin plays a very uncouth American con man who is satisfied with conning women out of 20 bucks and a sandwich. And unfortunately, they are both working the same area. Since neither wants to leave, eventually they end up agreeing on a target, the hapless Janet Colgate, and betting each other that whoever scams her out of $50,000 first gets to stay in that area, and the other has to leave. I guess you can't have two con men working in the same city. People will get suspicious. There are some hilarious shenanigans between the two of them as they each try to gain the upper hand, proving they're the better con man, and trying to ensure not only their own victory, but also their opponent's downfall. However, as they get to know their target better, they start to empathize with her. They both, well, at least Michael Caine has a change of heart, and they let the victim go. When it's suddenly revealed that she, hapless Janet, had the upper hand the whole time. Janet was the jackal, and she took them for 50 grand. Now, back at the beginning of the film, it's never outright stated that Steve Martin is the jackal, but in a conversation, Michael Caine assumes he is, quite authoritatively, and we, the viewers, also assume he's right. And with the story being about who's the better con man, it's hilarious that it turns out she was conning them the whole time. Now that is how to foreshadow and have a meaningful plot twist. In Hazbin Hotel, the only actual foreshadowing we get is in the last episode, and it really seems more like a desperate attempt to try to get people interested in season 2, so is that really foreshadowing? I'm being far too generous. This isn't foreshadowing, this is just a preview. No foreshadowing. And the rest of the show is just a series of unrelated events. Which brings me to point number 3, wasted time. The storytelling in this show is extremely inefficient. You'd think with 8 20-minute episodes and a story this, well, not complex, but trying to be this complex, you'd think you would try to use every second as efficiently as possible. Not so. What purpose does Mimsy serve? You might not know who she is because I didn't mention her in the plot summary, because she doesn't do anything. She just shows up to tell us how powerful Alastor is, but the story has already told us that and then goes on later to tell us again, before he's immediately beaten by Adam, and then again before immediately recovering and joining the rest of the characters again. So we didn't need Mimsy for that, she just took up screen time. Same with Vox. Same with pretty much everyone over at Vox Tech. What did Nifty do? Almost anyone could have killed Adam and it would have had the same impact. It didn't really matter that she cleaned the hotel. If she was supposed to be funny, she wasn't. What did Husk do? If you cut him out of the story, has anything overall really changed? You don't have a bartender, so you'll just have to get your own booze now, I guess. But neither the alcohol nor the bar really added anything to the story either, so it really served no purpose. In episode 3, when Vaggie says that they need to be more unified, yes, they do, sure, but we don't get to see any of that. Nothing! It's like an off-screen montage. They're suddenly besties at the end of this episode, except that they weren't, because then Husk and Angel suddenly had to resolve their differences again in the very next episode. So what even was the point of this team-building exercise? This is just the kind of thing you could have and should have spent time on. Show how and why the characters don't get along. What are their goals? And why? How do they see each other? How could they potentially work better together and learn from each other? Let me get into their heads. What can I learn about them? What can I learn about myself? Nothing, apparently. It would have made a lot of sense to have all this happen on screen in a show where a motley crew bands together to fight to save what's basically their rehabilitation center in the concluding episode. And even though Angel's story in episode 4, what little of it there was, could have been interesting, it too was ultimately pointless. He feels empty and broken, and to forget that he's now caught in a vicious cycle of addiction, he's punishing himself, and because he can't fix himself, he hopes that maybe one day his boss will forget him and move on if he's broken enough. That's actually a really interesting story, but what does it have to do with the main plot? We don't focus enough on Angel or this plotline, even in this one episode, for this to mean anything. Really, the most we get here is just one line from Angel.
If I can ruin myself enough in the process, if I end up broken, I won't be his favorite toy anymore.
Is this just supposed to get the audience to feel bad for him or something? Or to excuse his behavior? I thought he had free will, so isn't this all his fault anyways?
I didn't ask to be this way.
I can only blame myself.
The hotel isn't a problem in his life. It's...
Valentino.
Exactly!
The more I think about it, it's definitely you.
This also doesn't tell us anything we didn't already know about Angel or couldn't have assumed about him. All this detour does is waste precious, precious screen time. So most of episodes 3, 4, 5, 7, and I guess 8 too. Vox kept showing up in that last episode for no reason. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5? That's more than half of the episodes in your already short season. Most of these episodes didn't matter. They add nothing to the plot. On top of that, a lot of the remaining runtime is taken up by 2 several-minute-long songs per episode.
Stop that. You're not going into a song while I'm here.
And even when they do relate to the plot, it's often, most of the time, only relaying information that we already know. Or worse, just patting Charlie on the back.
Your lyrics lack subtlety.
So that also makes these songs a waste of time. Now you have what? Well less than half the runtime left for actual storytelling, and even that is mostly squandered because the plot is meaningless. Things happened, but it didn't mean anything. Point number 4. Dialogue. The dialogue wastes yet more time and also doesn't do much to further the story. The way these characters all talk. Are these people adults or very, very immature children?
Call me fake one more time, mother. I dare you.
Fake.
You think you're tough?
I'm tougher than you.
That's Princess of Hell to you, pig.
That hurts.
Your song, I started this.
I'm singing it, I'll finish it.
Oh, you attacking it?
And this is a slight tangent, but Lucifer and Alastor are supposed to be the strongest and at least one of the stronger beings in Hell, respectively, and they're also supposed to be old. If this is present day, Alastor is probably around 100, and Lucy's 10,000 to several billion
billions and billions
years old, depending on the age of the Earth in the Hazbin Hotel world. Wait a second. Okay, in this world, angels created humans. They don't jumpstart evolution or anything. So this is a creationist kind of world-building scenario, so yeah, Lucifer is 6 to 10,000 years old here. Anyway, my point still stands. Why is he still so incompetent, immature, stupid, and petty?
A family trait, I think.
And I get that sometimes immortality is, disappointingly, not about exploring the perspective of someone who's been alive for that long and isn't bound by mortality, so it's just about the aesthetic, I guess. So I'll deal with the story on that level. That said, even if these old as hell characters aren't actually being treated as old as hell, even though Lucifer would actually be older than hell, they're at the very least adults, and they act like children.
Am I a man? Am I a baby? These are legitimate questions.
They talk to each other like children, and they solve conflicts like children. Charlie's preschool level conflict resolution program makes a lot more sense now. Yet, I'm still annoyed.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go write 100 apology letters and a lesson plan for tomorrow about boundaries.
Starts with sorry. I'm sorry I bit you and pulled your hair and punched you in the face. Apology not accepted. Now get out of my way before I run you over.
In Bob's Burgers, the banter between Bob and Jimmy Pesto is funny, sure, but the point is they're being immature.
Hey, I'm Bob. I like to sweep, but I can't keep any customers. Zoom.
I'm Jimmy. I like to stand in front of my restaurant. Why are you coming over here?
I'm bored. You must know what that's like, right? Because of your life? Ha!
And even so, it's still not as stupid as these characters when they're apparently being serious.
Well, it's not very clever.
Yeah, see, this isn't Banner. This is what I want to avoid.
This doesn't make them look powerful, it makes them look weak and insecure. Point number 5. The humor.
Just because you can thrill a toddler by chewing with your mouth open doesn't mean you should.
I'll admit there were a few lines I did laugh at, but overall, this show isn't funny. Especially when it's trying to be. It's like this show was written by a kid who just learned about sex and swear words and thinks that's peak humor.
What would you do to help educate our kids?
Simple. Teach kids swears. That'll bring them into the real world.
The problem isn't that the jokes were about sex and swears, it's about how they were done. In the Mint Mobile commercials I keep getting on YouTube, Ryan Reynolds says,
"The marketing department asked me to be as explicit as possible for only $15 a month."
The joke isn't, haha, this guy said a swear. It's a joke about the multiple meanings of the word explicit. Then we have the surprisingly old Kmart commercials.
I can ship my pants for free.
Wow, I just may ship my pants.
I can't wait to ship my pants.
I just shipped my bed.
It's funny because it not only sounds like, another word, and certainly not something you want to do in your pants or your bed. It's also funny because of the situation. You've got children, mothers, dads, the elderly, all these clean-cut kind of people all saying they've shipped their pants. People you don't expect to be saying things like this. They're saying it so openly, so publicly, and they're smiling when they say it, and no one bats an eye. It's funny because it's alluding to a word and a situation that a lot of people would probably consider offensive or inappropriate. At least back then.
Young people use curse words!
In Megamind, when he's playing Highway to Hell and keeps getting cut off, it's funny because the radio is malfunctioning, but also because it keeps cutting out the word hell. In Liar Liar, when Jim Carrey's character is no longer able to lie and tells his ex-wife over the phone that he missed his son's birthday party because he was having sex in his office,
lies are the glue that holds society together.
The reason this is funny isn't because, ha, this guy was having sex. It's funny because it's extremely inappropriate to tell that to your ex-wife, and it makes him look very scummy, which he is, breaking his promise and having a one-night stand instead of spending time with his son on his birthday. And it's funny because as much as he doesn't want to admit to having done this, he's unable to stop himself because he can't lie. So in these examples, there's sex and swearing, yeah, and that's part of the reason these jokes are funny, but there's more to it than that. But in Hazbin Hotel, the joke is just, haha, he said a bad word, or haha, sex, and that's it.
Isn't that funny, kids? You have absolutely no sense of humor, do you?
You're literally in hell. There's plenty of very easy jokes there. The real joke is getting people to watch this show, I guess.
Some kind of horrific joke without a punchline?
And now, the last section. Characters, but mostly Charlie. Starting with my favorite.
The most important person in the whole wide world is you.
Charlie's goal is to redeem sinners through the hotel. That seems pretty obvious, but I think we're supposed to think her motivation to do so is just because she's a good person. However, that's not how Charlie behaves. Everything she does can be traced back to her desire for approval. Therefore, her motivation is receiving validation. She wants people to think she's a good person. Charlie is presented to us as being nice and right and understanding.
What about me? Me says ununderstanding.
Like everything.
I believe she's supposed to be a caring, mature mother figure with a positive flat arc. However, this girl has zero emotional intelligence, possibly zero intelligence, no empathy for others, no understanding of others, and a complete lack of critical thinking skills. She expects everyone else to change but refuses to change herself. And on top of that, she's also self-absorbed and condescending. And now, I will back all of this up. Episode 4 is a great example. When Angel gets a call from Val, he's clearly upset about it and even afraid. Charlie, in her infinite wisdom, does not pick up on this and assumes he's being disrespectful and not taking her program seriously. I mean, what self-respecting adult wouldn't take this seriously? Anyways, instead of noticing that he's hiding his emotions and seeing that there's more to the situation, she just responds emotionally, making it all about herself. She inserts herself into the situation very inappropriately by following him to work, pisses everyone off, and even sets the studio on fire.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
Making things much, much worse for him. Instead of helping him, shouldering his burden alongside him, she becomes yet another burden herself. Charlie comes off as a child who doesn't understand the situation and is just upset because other people are upset.
My emotions! My emotions!
Once Angel forgives her, she drops it immediately because she doesn't care how Angel feels. She cares how she feels, and she feels bad when other people are upset with her. She doesn't even care why he's upset with her. She won't deal with the real problems, hers or Angel's. She just wants to put a band-aid on things and get back to what's really important. Helping others deal with their problems. Which I bet is really hard to do when you're bad at identifying problems, refuse to pursue solutions, and are too self-absorbed to notice or even care about how your friends are doing. Now let's look at some characters that do a much better job of embodying various aspects of what I can only assume they are going for with Charlie's character. We'll also look at why they work and why Charlie doesn't. The first and probably most obvious character is Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Katara is wonderfully balanced.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Showing us both the strengths and weaknesses of a caring mother figure. She's idealistic, loyal, gentle, and kind, and she genuinely cares about those around her. But because of her ideals, she can also be inflexible, self-righteous, pushy, and even vengeful if she feels like her ideals are violated. She butts heads with Toph because Toph won't do things the way Katara thinks they're supposed to be done. And Katara's certainly not wrong to call Toph out and encourage her to help, but she handles the situation angrily because her ideals of community have been violated.
You both need to calm down.
Both? I'm completely calm!
And the story holds her accountable for this. It's shown that this is the wrong response and she needs to grow. She needs to learn to be compassionate towards people she doesn't understand. And rather than laziness, I suspect Toph's refusal to help out and engage comes more from a fear of community and finding comfort in keeping her distance, while community is one of the most important things to Katara, making them the perfect characters to challenge each other and grow. But that's the point. Katara is wrong. We can see that, the story confirms that, and instead of pretending Katara is perfect, this allows her to grow. Another good example is Amy in Sonic Boom. This version of Amy, like most of the characters in this show, is an exaggerated parody of herself and how she appears in other media. Boom Amy is pushy, self-righteous, self-absorbed, nosy, controlling, and she sees herself as caring and wants to be known as a caring person, but she doesn't really care about helping people as much as she cares about them doing things her way. One example is when she thinks Styx the Badger, an original character for the show with about as much plot relevance as Nifty, has a hoarding problem. Instead of figuring out why Styx is hoarding and identifying the real problem, Amy forces her to have a yard sale.
I'm only doing what anyone would do for a friend who's pathetic and hopeless. Hey!
I was trying to help!
Which unleashes the apocalypse.
Apoco tips for the apocalypse.
And this all happened because Amy can't keep her nose out of other people's business, wants things to go her way, and wants to be perceived as helpful, right, and caring. But we know she's wrong. The story and the other characters call her out, and because the tone is comedic, it's funny that she's wrong. Can you imagine how absolutely insufferable it would be to have a character this incompetent and wrong, but the story keeps saying they're right? An example you might not be expecting as an overbearing mother figure is Mr. Frond, the school guidance counselor in Bob's Burgers. Surprisingly, he has a lot in common with Charlie. He sees himself as a brilliant visionary.
Once upon a time, there was no such thing as math. One brave teacher said, "Hey, what about math? Independent study, synchronized swimming will be the next math."
He's above all the little problems everyone else has, and only his wisdom can fix these problems. But he never actually knows what the problem is and often makes things worse. And he doesn't really care about the students, except maybe in that one episode, but that was an outlier. In general, what's more important to him is status, power, and recognition. He wants to be perceived as a caring and wise person, but behind his back, the students mock him and his, well, stupid and unhelpful ideas. And they're still better than anything Charlie's got. When other people make suggestions, Frond is too arrogant and cowardly to confront his own incompetence and make any real changes.
This may sound crazy, but kids might listen to you more if they knew that you made a big mistake when you were their age.
That does sound crazy. Nobody wants a relatable guidance counselor.
However, unlike with Charlie, this is the joke. Frond's incompetence and lack of self-awareness. Star from Star vs. the Forces of Evil isn't the same overbearing motherly figure who needs to insert themselves into everyone's lives to care for them, for better or worse, like Charlie, Katara, Amy, and, I guess Mr. Frond too. That's not why Star is relevant. Like Charlie, Star is also a princess and is responsible for the well-being of her people. Star has her own strengths and weaknesses. She's confident, spontaneous, carefree, which sometimes works in her favor and sometimes doesn't. But the story does call her out and give her the opportunity to grow. In one episode, Star's dad, River, comes to visit her on Earth. And at first they bond over how similar they are, and it's really cute. But then she starts to get annoyed with how he just does his own thing with no consideration for others, and then she realizes she does the same thing. At the end of the episode, she learns that it's not bad that she's zany and spontaneous, but at the same time, she needs to have some awareness of how her actions affect others. She and River both apologize and both grow. Contrast this with Charlie making up with Lucy. They solve all their unspecified, made-up daddy issues in a short yet strangely beautiful song. Charlie is perfect in Lucy's eyes, which could have been interesting, except that Charlie is perfect in everyone's eyes. And Lucy's 2-minute character arc is being inspired by Charlie and realizing that his problems would all be solved if he became more like Charlie. Just like every other character in the show. Now, if Charlie had ways the story was pushing her to grow and her dad's blind admiration of her was holding her back, that would be interesting. That's not what we get. Megamind also comes to mind. He's a self-proclaimed villain looking for a new rival to fight after Metro Man dies. Megamind accidentally gives the inept Hal superpowers, but instead of removing the powers, he decides to train him. because he sees himself in Hal, a loser
baby,
that no one believes in. So Megamind projects onto him. He thinks that if he gives Hal a chance, he'll do the right thing and be a good person. If Hal can do it, that means he can too. Like Charlie, Megamind tries to fix someone else instead of addressing his own problems. But with Charlie, this is treated like a cute little acceptable, even good flaw to have. So no chance of character development here. With Hal, turns out when you're immature and selfish, a lot of power just makes this worse. And you're not only able to ruin your own life, but also a lot of other people's as well. But Megamind has to confront his own shortcomings, and even though he still calls himself the villain, he has to change himself before he can overcome Hal and save the city. Megamind was wrong to believe in Hal. We, the audience, could see what an awful person Hal was, so it would have been frustrating if this hadn't been the outcome and the story treated Megamind as if he was right, even when he was wrong, and this was causing a lot of problems for everyone. And it's not Charlie's hope that's the problem.
Look, you want false hope or not? Only if you don't have any real hope.
It's that she's ignorant and bad at this.
My name is Charlie. I like to sing, and when we get to know each other, it's the greatest thing.
She doesn't actually see the good in people and the potential for them to change and grow.
Sinners are violent psychopaths, hell-bent on causing as much pain and destruction as they can.
He's defending this hotel. It may be a bit more sadistic than I'd hoped, but he's doing it for me.
You buy yourself a tape recorder, you just record yourself for a whole day. I think you're gonna be surprised at some of your phrasing.
And it's because she refuses to confront her own problems that she's unable to help others. Naruto is the exact opposite of this. He's worked so hard to get where he is and change the public's perception of him. He started out as an orphaned troublemaker that pretty much everyone hated and avoided, but 700 episodes later, much more manageable when you skip the filler, spoilers, he finally becomes the Hokage. His dream to become the Hokage starts out selfishly. He just wants people to like him and respect him.
Why don't they like me?
But his journey is him realizing he's wrong, changing for the better, and eventually wanting to become Hokage because he comes to understand what that means and genuinely wants to protect the people. His endless optimism sometimes gets him in trouble, but because he overcame his shortcomings, he thinks other people can do it too. He always tries to reason with his enemies and convince them that they can change, and sometimes it works and other times it doesn't. But he always gives them a chance. He never gives up and never stops believing, which is both his best and worst quality.
That's my one flaw.
Heck, Gaara murdered people for fun, but Naruto kept reaching out to him, partially because he saw himself in Gaara, isolated, alone, used, and hated for the power they wielded. They fought to the almost death.
Almost died is the best part of living. It's called almost live dying.
And at the end, they're both pretty much unable to move, but Naruto drags himself over to Gaara, not to finish the job, but to reach out one more time. And by the second series, Gaara is the Kazekage, well loved by his people and a pretty chill dude all around. All thanks to Naruto. In Charlie's case, she believed in these truly depraved citizens of hell for no reason, but then Adam is just all bad.
They're the same picture.
It's inconsistent and meaningless. I don't know, she also probably didn't believe in Val or Vox or whatever, but same thing. She picks and chooses very randomly. And lastly, this one might seem very random, although I guess the last few were pretty random anyways, but I just rewatched Thor, the first one, and it surprisingly had some relevant character moments. When the movie opens, everything is coming up Thor, but because of his impulsive, arrogant, and aggressive nature, Odin, his father, not only refused to crown him king, but also stripped him of his powers, exiled him to Earth, completely humiliating him.
Unworthy of these realms, unworthy of your title! You're unworthy!
And took away his hammer, Mjolnir, saying that only someone worthy could lift that hammer. Talk about letting a character fail. I mean, what a great setup. You know what all this main character failure did for me as a viewer? It made me so excited to root for Thor. What's he gonna do? How's he gonna overcome this? How and why will he change? The rest of the movie is kind of a mess, but it had a great setup. Part of the problem is the same one Hazbin Hotel has. Thor's friends never call him out. They are loyal to a stupid fault. Thor was in the wrong and they just blindly support him the whole time, which isn't helpful to him, or them, or Asgard. Okay, there are many ways the story could have let Charlie grow, which would have made her less insufferable and potentially actually a good character. What if she had a revelation that she was really naive? Then she could reconsider her ideas with this new information and use this growth to better help those around her. And also, the destruction of the hotel could have actually meant something. Not to keep harping on that. What if in episode 4, where Charlie gets all up into Angel's business against his wishes and she messes everything up, what if she was actually called out there? You can tell Angel is frustrated with her, but then feels bad for her and doesn't want to hurt her feelings, and says everything's okay, even though he's the one who actually needed help. Letting stuff go is great, but in this case, it's not helpful to Angel or Charlie. And because her friends don't want to hurt her little fee-fees, they're effectively holding her back. If Angel had called her out, as her friend, and said that, yeah, she shouldn't have gotten involved and what she did made things worse, they could talk about it. She could have a whole character arc where she realizes that she doesn't actually care about other people or their feelings, she only cares about her own. Of course, she doesn't want to confront that because it would absolutely shatter her self-perception.
This is my first time being wrong! Is it always this scary?
But can you imagine what a great character moment that would be? She could grow as a character and actually learn how to help her friends.
With win-win-win, we all win. Me too.
As is, no one will call her out, which holds her back and in turn holds them back because she's not able to help them.
If we do lose-lose, neither of you gets what you want.
I guess part of the problem with this is that Angel, and really no one in this show, has the emotional maturity to recognize or do that sort of thing.
Whoa. You can't censor me just because I'm an obscenely bad role model.
There's no one mature and no one to look up to. I don't think a mentor character would necessarily be the right solution, but if Charlie is going to be this childish, we needed at least one character more mature than Charlie, for her, and maybe even the others, to learn from. It wouldn't be that hard, she's very immature. Everything in this show serves to validate Charlie. Every character either agrees with Charlie or is an antagonist.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Adam becomes the villain of the whole series when he dismisses Charlie's idea. When Lucifer points out how depraved everyone in hell is and how her idea might need some workshopping, she's just upset that he doesn't believe in her. She likes Alastor because he says what she wants to hear. When Angel's upset with her, she's just concerned about his perception of her. Even the very idea of the hotel is to impress her mom and gain her approval.
Don't worry, Mom. I'll make you proud.
Everyone caters to her delicate ego and feelings, and no one challenges her. The only thing remotely challenged was my patience. Even the other characters' arcs were just learning to care more about the hotel, like Charlie already did.
You've changed my mind. You've touched their hearts. We can build it. Best hotel that you've ever seen.
So the real message of the story is, be like Charlie. Everyone in this show is terrible. The only way to differentiate between the heroes and the villains is to see who Charlie was annoyed with. Charlie becomes the ultimate arbiter of moral good and moral evil. Even many of the songs are about how great Charlie is.
It's a feeling like a rumbling.
She refuses to deal with her own problems, which is why she focuses so much on fixing other people. Just like how she refuses to fix the problems in her own domain and instead is focused on heaven and why it's wrong. Charlie is not a nice person. She just seems nice and wants you to think she's nice. And those kinds of people are very dangerous. It's very easy to be fooled by those kinds of people. She also wasn't open to compromise or discussing changes to her idea, which I guess makes sense when the story just assumes you're right about everything. The only time Charlie is wrong is when it doesn't matter. Like that one time when she thinks that everyone fighting together isn't going to bring them closer together. But it's inconsequential that she's wrong here. It doesn't mean anything. She doesn't learn anything, we don't learn anything either. And actually, no one learns anything because in the very next episode, everyone hates each other again anyways, so Charlie was actually right. All along.
There's only one person I can think of who could pull this off. Someone super intelligent.
Make sure they have the best time tonight. Whatever redemption really means. I know you all tried. I have seen the good in all of you.
Oh yeah, keep on coming. Right here, right there.
Live tonight, however you want, because
morality is relative.
Vaggie isn't helping either. She's Charlie's other half, literally.
Literally!
She's also Charlie's angel.
No. I don't get it, but no.
They aren't two complementary characters that challenge each other and work better together. They are two halves that make up the same one weak character. Vaggie just exists to agree with Charlie and hype her up and tell her how great she is.
What do you like to do?
Whatever you like.
What kind of music do you like?
Whatever kind of music you like.
Their relationship is nothing more than a shallow Tumblr relationship dynamic post. Sunshine and the serious one. In a story where Charlie is obsessed with changing everyone around her and molding them into her image.
I got life-size molds of all my friends.
Buford had a mold of me.
Buford's got molds of all of us.
She herself refuses to change. Not ever letting your character fail is boring, especially a very flawed main character in a character-driven story, but more importantly, it stunts the character. Charlie can't become better, she can't learn anything, I can't learn anything, and she can't grow because the story won't let her. All this meaningless validation is annoying and holding Charlie back. And it's preventing her from making the changes she needs to make and becoming the character she has the potential to be. Is Charlie supposed to be relatable? You'd have to be as unself-aware and self-absorbed as Charlie to find her relatable. Watching Charlie gave me this great sense of injustice, because she's constantly getting away with having all these glaring inconsistencies and character flaws while the story validates her and tells me I'm wrong for thinking Charlie's ever done anything wrong in her life ever. And on top of that, Charlie actually embodies everything that she claims to hate and fight against. She's self-righteous, ununderstanding, judgmental, and controlling, which could have been an interesting character if the story ever called her out. Angel is such a bizarre character. In a story that's probably supposed to be about redemption and change, he doesn't really change and he doesn't get redeemed. He's a self-loathing adult film star and an addict at the beginning of the show, and he's still that way by the end.
Do I preach to you when you're lying stoned in the gutter? No. Come on, man. Don't hold out on me like this.
Perhaps slightly less self-loathing after singing that song with Husk about just admitting that you're a loser and that makes everything okay. But here's the thing. It's really weird that Charlie tried to use Angel as an example when he hasn't really been trying to change and the good things he did were actually just ignoring his problems while trying to help someone else. Just like Charlie does. So in that way, I guess it makes perfect sense that Charlie would choose him. However, Pentious is right here. It was only a roughly 7-minute arc, but it was the longest and most complex arc out of anyone in the show, sadly. Out of all the characters there, Pentious was the only one who truly changed. He actually learned to trust, forgive, be responsible, selfless, and be self-sacrificial. So I guess the story's saying those are good things?
I don't even know how to respond to this.
The story even confirmed his change, as after he died in hell, he must have passed divine judgment because he somehow ended up in heaven. What makes his sacrifice particularly noteworthy, especially in this show, is that he had no expectation of a reward. He sacrificed himself because he thought it was the right thing to do. What I'm saying is, Charlie should have used Pentious as an example. Even though he's behaving like this in the Consent Club, still better than Angel. Now on to Adam. The only reason Adam is even a villain is because he's the only character who challenges Charlie. Which doesn't make him look bad, it makes Charlie look bad. I don't want it to look like I'm out here defending Adam. Adam's a dick.
Call me Dickmaster.
But when you look at the people in hell Charlie is dead set on defending, he's comparatively nowhere near as bad. So why does Charlie have a problem with him? Why doesn't she believe that this character, who certainly isn't anywhere near as depraved as anyone else she believes in, why is this guy the exception? And it's because he doesn't immediately agree with her, like everyone else does. And when he's dismissive of her idea, and he shows that it's at the very least not going to be easy or even possible to change his mind, he's immediately designated as the villain. And he's a complete failure as a villain. He's nothing more than a straw man, because in a story that tries to explore moral complexity and how good and evil is nuanced or not what you'd expect, he's all evil all the time, baby. But so is everyone else. But for some reason, they're okay. What's the point? What is Adam supposed to represent? He doesn't even succeed in at least making the other characters look better by comparison.
I love you, but you're all terrible.
A good villain challenges something very important to the main character or the main theme. And to be fair, it doesn't have to be a physical villain, just something in the story that directly challenges the main character or the main theme. That's what Adam was supposed to be doing, but didn't. Syndrome from The Incredibles is a good example of this. At the beginning of the story, Bob Parr, or Mr. Incredible, believes that he works best alone. During an encounter with a young fan, Buddy, Bob tells him that he works alone.
Buddy, I work alone.
Oui, ta tenue est complètement ridicule!
And while that is the correct answer in this situation because Buddy's refusal to leave caused a villain to get away and a bomb to go off which blew up a section of train track, Bob telling Buddy that he works alone also served as the catalyst that set Buddy on his villain arc to becoming Syndrome. Not that Bob is responsible for Buddy's actions in any way, but narratively it's a great moment to have. Years later, Bob still believes that he works best alone, and he's currently in the superhero relocation program with his family after supers have been banned from using their powers in public, also as a result of that previously described inciting incident. Which leads us to Bob's second belief. Supers are not obsolete. Syndrome lures Bob in by claiming to agree with this belief about supers, but his plan all along is to become a superhero himself by fabricating a problem in the form of the Omnidroid that only he can solve, and he plans to achieve this by first using the Omnidroid to kill all of the other superheroes, rendering supers completely and irreversibly obsolete while also working completely alone. Bob, in an effort to protect his family, provide for them, and do what he thinks is best for them, continues to work alone, which ends up distancing himself from his family as he has to lie and keep more and more secrets as he continues to work alone. But he's in too deep. He cannot solve this on his own. So Bob learns to work with and rely on his family, and when Syndrome's plan goes awry, together they defeat Syndrome and the Omnidroid, proving to the public that supers are no longer obsolete. So Bob believes that he works best alone, the villain directly challenges that, and Bob learns that he should work with others. Bob also believes that supers are not obsolete, the villain challenges that, but Bob's original belief is confirmed to be correct. So those are two different ways a villain or an antagonist or an obstacle can and should challenge the protagonist or theme of the story, and Hazbin Hotel has none of that. Also, not to bring up the meaninglessness of the destruction of the hotel again, but Syndrome using the Omnidroid to kill off supers both represents the fall of the superhero and also literally facilitates it, while the family coming together to defeat it at the end represents the end of the superhero ban and also directly serves to change the public's opinion. The robot isn't just a robot, just like the house in Encanto isn't just a house in Encanto, which is why the Hazbin Hotel shouldn't have just been a location that the characters sometimes were. All this potential. Syndrome and Adam are examples of a villain directly challenging the protagonist and their belief, but Cars has an antagonist that indirectly challenges the main character and a main character that kind of serves as his own antagonist. Lightning McQueen is a selfish and brash race car, hoping to be the first rookie to win the Piston Cup. He believes that his actions have no negative consequences, and they haven't so far, and that success is winning at any cost. His main competition, the King and Chick Hicks, represent the two paths he could go down. The soon-to-retire The King, who has the success, admiration, and Dynaco sponsorship McQueen thinks he deserves, and Chick Hicks, the arrogant runner-up who's always one tire behind the King and also has his eye on that sweet, sweet Dynaco sponsorship. And because this is a well-written story, McQueen learns real fast that his actions do indeed have consequences.
Boy, you're in a heap of trouble.
Lightning was right about who to emulate, but wrong about why. He does need to follow in the tire tracks of Mr. the King, but not because of his outward success. The King isn't successful because he's a winner, he's successful because of his character, his kind nature, his integrity. The King is really respected because of this, and McQueen doesn't have to fear becoming a loser, both in the race and in life, like Chick, because his choices have already kind of made him one. And that's not a path he wants to keep going down. McQueen believed that his actions had no consequences and that success was winning. The story challenged that, and he was kind of his own antagonist here, and he learned his lesson. And while Chick did serve as an antagonist by directly standing in the way of the Dynaco sponsorship that McQueen wanted, he also served as kind of a mirror for McQueen and showed us the negative consequences that McQueen could have faced if he hadn't chosen to change. Chick might have ended up with some outward success at the end of the story, but since he remained an arrogant jerk and attained that success through untoward means, he was not rewarded for his efforts. His actions had negative consequences because he still believed that success was winning at any cost, rather than success being having good character. So here, the antagonist does directly stand in the way of what the hero wants, but also shows the hero who he is and who he's on his way to becoming if he doesn't change. In Naruto, the titular character believes in everyone and believes they can all change. He always tries to give the villains a chance, and sometimes it works, like the Gaara example I brought up earlier, and sometimes it doesn't. Throughout most of the series, he is chasing after his friend Sasuke. Both Naruto and Sasuke had very traumatic childhoods, and while Naruto ultimately chose to learn from this and become a hero and protect those around him, Sasuke, chose the opposite. Because Naruto's strengths are his hopefulness and his tenacity, he never gives up. But Sasuke directly and personally challenges Naruto's belief that everyone can change, and it works very well for the story and both of their characters. Adam's problem isn't that he's supposed to be comedic, I guess. A well-written comedic villain can help add some much-needed comic relief to balance out the more serious characters and can help keep the tone light. The problem is that because of how Charlie is written, he's not allowed to be a good villain. He just serves as a distraction. Charlie's argument isn't well thought out, so his has to be even weaker. Charlie has to be unequivocally right, so Adam has to be unequivocally wrong. Charlie isn't that smart, so Adam has to be even dumber.
Do I look that stupid? Yes, you do.
Charlie's just out here holding everyone back. This doesn't make her look triumphant, it makes her look weak and insecure. Adam's best quality is his comic relief, what little of it there is, and he would have been much better relegated to goofy side character status, while a much better villain could have been Sarah. And not really even a villain, Sarah would have been an antagonist. She has the potential to meaningfully challenge Charlie. Her views and values are similar to Charlie, but the execution, pun intended, and how she applies those values are where she and Charlie differ. If this was written well, you could have had the story lead up to both Charlie and Sarah, and consequently us as the viewers, reconsidering their ideas. And you could give Sarah a negative arc. Instead of coming to some sort of compromise with Charlie, of course Charlie would have to be open to compromise too, but you could have Sarah double down on her original beliefs, solidifying her as a villain. This would have been more interesting, makes more sense, actually gives Charlie a meaningful challenge, and really would have helped to explore that idea of complex morality. Right now, the most climactic moment of the story is Charlie being told no. I mean, how could you say no to this puppy-eyed maniac who supports cannibals and murderers? Seriously, this is the hill you want to die and consume human flesh on?
I know I'm gonna be the victor. Because the symbol of good always wins? No, because the lead in a television series always wins.
What would this look like if we gave the story some better tension? Angel's pretty clear that he's just there for the free rent and makes no effort to change, which again makes it weird that Charlie tried to use him as an example. Whatever. But what if he did get frustrated enough with his situation that he did try to change? But because Charlie is incompetent and ultimately unable to help him, they're unable to get to the root of his problem and they just focus on external behavior. Because his internal motivation hasn't changed, he has nothing to hold on to and nothing greater motivating him when he's challenged. So when Charlie tries to use him as an example for heaven, we see him, and therefore Charlie, fail spectacularly. She feels betrayed. She trusted him and her entire project hinged on this. He feels like even more of a failure. He failed himself and Charlie, and pretty much all of hell. What do they do from here? Does Charlie engage in any self-reflection, or does she refuse to even consider that she might be wrong? Does she forgive Angel immediately? Does she become jaded and start to lose some of that unrelenting hope? Does she realize that she didn't understand Angel's problem in the first place, and that's why she was unable to help him? Does she apologize to Angel? What does Angel do? Does this make him want to figure out what the real problem is, or does he spiral even deeper into his vices? Charlie believed everyone can change. Well, not really, but in my version she does. Does she still believe that? That is so much more interesting than Charlie getting told no and then the fake melodrama with Vaggie's angel reveal.
Boo, horrible idea.
Adam didn't challenge Charlie because even though he didn't change, she never believed he would. And Angel didn't challenge Charlie either because he didn't change and she believed he did, because she's delusional. Emily is the last character I have anything to say about, and she didn't even need an arc because she was already a Charlie clone. But here's the thing. Her perspective is really weird. Why is she so repulsed by heaven destroying evil? That's their whole thing. And if she's that sheltered, shouldn't she have had an absolutely visceral reaction to seeing the depravity at the sex club? That should have broken her. Like, she can't even believe that something that degenerate exists. And if heaven is that bad, can't Emily just leave? And if it is that bad, why do you want to lure sinners here with the promise of a better life? Isn't that just mean? Which is it? Is heaven a good place or a bad place to live? What I think is that heaven is a nice looking and well taken care of place. Charlie just doesn't agree with the values of heaven. But aren't those values what keep it nice in the first place, Charlie? A real parallel to American politics these days. Oh, remember when I said Emily was the last character I had anything to say about? Apparently I have a section on Alastor. Alastor is a pathetic loser, just like everyone else in hell. He talks big game about never letting people know what you're thinking, but he loses his cool constantly, just like everyone else. And it's not that hard to tell what he's thinking. It would have been much more impactful if the story just hinted at how powerful he was. He kept his cool the entire show. And then during the big fight at the end, that's when we get to see his special yet still vague overlord powers. And yeah, he does appear to be powerful, I guess. But when an innocuous comment is enough to make you lose your cool, you're not powerful, you're weak.
The most grievous insult. Oh, here comes violence.
Well, I wanted to be excited for Viv's Depop, and even though I did have pretty low expectations, I've known about her since her Zoophobia days, so I was a little curious about her animated shows. Having your story idea, designing the characters, and actually seeing it through and animating it, that is really cool. A literal dream come true. And yet, I find myself embarrassed for her. And just disappointed in general, because this was the story you wanted to tell?
30 long years, and it's all led up to this. My greatest achievement.
Sometimes I kill mother bugs in front of their children as a warning.
Wow, who wrote this?
It's great, right?
She said she had questions about her religious upbringing. That's fair, you should have questions, but what are you asking here? Besides too much of me. In her own story, heaven still looked relatively good, at least by comparison, and hell still looked much, much worse. Everyone's the bad guy, I guess, but still mostly hell. Also, isn't it extremely offensive to use Christian imagery in your show intended to mock Christianity? Kind of a weird choice. Much like Adam, this entire show is a straw man. I know it's trying to call out Christianity somehow. What the heck is it even criticizing? You cannot mock or satirize something that you don't understand. I think they're trying to say that Christians are bad because they're judgmental hypocrites? Maybe? I mean, that's not the story we got. And if they were trying to critique Christianity, boy, oh boy, was the theology in this terrible. I could make an entire video about it, and honestly, I might. No belief system is above questioning, except Charlianity, of course.
Hey, only Charlie can judge.
You're such a good Korean. Christian, what am I saying?
But there were no worthwhile questions asked here, and because of that, even fewer answers.
This is worthless.
It's less than worthless.
Also, if you have theological questions, go check out gotquestions.org. That is a great place to start. If what they were going for was Christians are all judgmental hypocrites, well, first of all, while all Christians are flawed sinners saved by grace through faith, not all Christians are judgmental hypocrites, and not all judgmental hypocrites are Christians. So what's even the point of bringing Christianity into this? Judgmental hypocrites are judgmental hypocrites, and we all find them annoying. Not to make a sweeping generalization, but I think I can safely assume this is something we agree on. If Hazbin Hotel is trying to say that Christianity sucks because Christians are sinners just like everyone else, Christianity would also agree with that. Well, except for the sucking part. What sets Christians apart is that they recognize that they're sinners, receive the free gift of salvation, and turn from their sin, meaning that they change. Not that they're perfect, of course. This is also kind of weird when you take into account the song Loser, which says that we're all terrible, and while that song doesn't encourage change, Charlie sometimes does. So again, you're trying to critique Christianity, but then also kind of agreeing with it. Sometimes. Kind of. There are absolutely some terrible people out there who call themselves Christians, but I assure you, they are not. Because they're not following God's word. The problem with focusing on these kinds of people in a critique of Christianity is that it's not critiquing Christianity, it has a problem with something that Christianity also has a problem with.
So you agree?
And also, it's judgmental. And I thought being judgmental was wrong.
Not to worry. I have a permit.
This just says I can do what I want.
Think about it this way. If you saw a bunch of people in a baseball field hitting each other with bats, that doesn't necessarily mean that baseball's an evil sport. It just means that they don't know how to play. But to someone who doesn't know the rules, after seeing something like this, or worse, experiencing something like this, they might spend their whole lives thinking baseball is evil. But imagine this person trying to critique baseball while actual players who know what the rules are are wondering what the heck this person is talking about, because it's not baseball, and also hopefully they can be a better example and help this hypothetical person work through whatever they experienced. My point is, you can't judge Christianity based on the actions of people who aren't following the rules God gave us in the Bible. Well, that was kind of a weird analogy. I really don't know where that came from. I find pretty much all ball-related sports to be quite uninteresting. Now, to be fair, the Bible unequivocally condemns a lot of things that Vivzie Pop seems to be cool with, judging by her artistic projects, and I'm not even just talking about cannibalism here.
Hey, there are parts of the Bible I like and parts I don't like.
But we didn't deal with any of that in this show. All we got was Heaven bad, Charlie good, but we were also never shown why. I haven't done a deep dive into Vivzie Pop's religious beliefs. All I could find on a quick perusal was that she grew up Presbyterian and that she questioned stories in the Bible like Adam, Eve, and Lucifer. I mean, that's a good thing. You should question your own beliefs, religious or not, but what was this supposed to be?
Oh no, the nasty.
I just finished the Penacony arc in Honkai Star Rail, and even though I have to say the storytelling is an absolute mess in that game, do not recommend. There was some Christian-y, Bible-y aesthetic in part of the Penacony arc, kind of treating it like mythology, and I really don't think they had the same intentions that Hazbin Hotel had, but they still asked some interesting questions that, if Hazbin Hotel had asked, I would have taken it a lot more seriously. Without getting too much into the story, partially because the story is such a mess I don't even know where to start, it does ask some really interesting questions about free will and agency, like, does a god have the right to protect you from yourself? Do you have the right to make your own bad decisions? Does too much protection prevent you from pursuing personal growth? Is free will worth it at the cost of your own safety? Is the protection of a god worth it at the cost of your own agency? I don't think it does a great job of answering those questions, partially because it was vague and extremely unfocused, and I'm being very generous here, and partially because it just assumes its own answer is correct without refuting the villain in any way. It even contradicts its own answers throughout the arc. It's weird. Like I said, bad storytelling, but the idea and the questions it tried to ask were actually really good, and I just can't say that about Hazbin Hotel. Those are questions I've had about my own faith. If we have free will to act within our nature, how do I reconcile that with the concepts of predestination and personal responsibility? God's common grace even keeps people from sinning as much as their fallen hearts desire, so where does that fit in? I just think those are better and more interesting questions than whatever the edgelord Vivzie thinks she's getting at. I really wish I could be happy for Vivzie's accomplishments, and I also wish there were more good stories out there being told. It's just so sad to see so many resources, money, time, talent being absolutely wasted on stories like this. I mean, garbage like this. I watched this show with low expectations, but I still thought maybe it would ask some interesting, if simple, questions, but in the end, here's what we got. The plot was dumb because Charlie's idea was dumb. The message was meaningless and inconsistent because Charlie was never called out for being wrong and even embodied the very things she claimed to be fighting against. The story was uninteresting because Charlie was never allowed to fail and the only forced tension was when someone disagreed with Charlie. The villain had to be weak because Charlie wasn't allowed to be challenged. With the exception of Pentious, the character arcs were just characters learning to become more like Charlie. A good number of the songs were about how great Charlie is, and Charlie herself was absolutely insufferable because of all of the above. Your entire show about questioning a religion sucks because you wouldn't allow your main character to ever be questioned. And on top of that, you're claiming to be questioning good and evil, but you're really just trying to cartoonize degeneracy.
Got to talk to the writers. This is terrible. Those guys are really overpaid.
There is good and evil, and stories like this almost always end up contradicting their own message because when it comes to the values they're trying to question, they never understood what those values meant or why they were important in the first place, so we end up with a whiny, uninspiring, convoluted plot that basically just says, you can't tell me what to do, while also telling others what to do. And when you refuse to define what you mean by good and evil beyond whatever your main character wants and what's convenient to the message, and more importantly, when you don't have an authority to point to as the source of your morality, whatever you say is going to ultimately be meaningless. Well, I really don't have anything else to say, so I guess I'll leave you with Philippians 1:21. To live is cannibalism. To die is... Wait, that's not right. Anyways, what the absolute hell was this show? Let's do less of that.
I've already done so much, so many drafts I've scratched.
You know, some people think that the only unforgivable sin was the Pharisees blaspheming the Holy Spirit in the New Testament. But I'm here to tell you that it's really subscribing to this channel. I specifically requested that no one subscribe, and already people aren't listening. Ghost is furious. Look, I know I'm not Charlie, so I don't have any right to make any moral judgments, but seriously, don't subscribe to my channel. These publicly available videos are for Ghost to watch. There's a lot of feminists and not straight people in hell. What are they trying to say with that?